Thanks. Good afternoon. Today is part two or part four of Literacy Project Brooklyn, New York City. And things went a little awry with the signatures for people to release the information if they were to be recorded. So what I'm attempting to do is to reiterate the information from the presentation with the larger group. This time, of course, being able to use the PowerPoint with the information. Wow, this is amazing. But let's just go and I'll share the information. And please take notes. I'm gonna say a little silent meditation. Let's go. Now, this is part two of the Brooklyn 2014 Literacy Project Series Winter. So it's actually the fourth one. And this was slotted to be financial planning, educational enhancement, family wellness, conflict analysis and intervention, and community development. Now, I'm going to be reading a lot of the information that is on the PowerPoint aloud because I'm not sure if from the camera's view you can actually read the PowerPoint. But the book that's up here is Yurugu. Yurugu is a book by Dr. Marimba Ani. And in that book, she talks about the view of the world being seen through the perspective of the European in every aspect, or even the lower vibrations of unrighteousness, which goes beyond the European, because everyone, can manipulate ways of unrighteousness. The ISIS papers, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, who also spoke in a similar fashion, but was talking about how the Caucasian genetic survival at the annihilation of everyone else, male survival would be enacted in more ways than one. I'm trying to give a brief synopsis of these books because in prior lectures we went over this information. The Psychological Covert War on Hip Hop by Professor Griff, who spoke about how hip hop was a music that was designed to assist in helping, a people thrive. And through commercialism, through, social programming, through media have turned into a whole nother spiel that takes away from building the communities and whatnot. They came before Columbus, that the original man and woman was here in North America before the Columbus travelers, etc. Stolen legacy, the Royal Library of Thebes, how all of this information was put into or stolen from the Royal Library of Thebes and, Greekized, so to speak, where the Greek, Romans, etc. started taking credit for what the Africans were doing, in Kemet, Kush, Nubia, Alkebulan, however you want to call that land there, and Breaking the Curse of Willie Lynch. George M. James, by the way, Stolen Legacy. They came for Columbus, Dr. Alvin Van Sertima, and Breaking the Curse of Willie Lynch, Alvin L. Murrow, Breaking the Psychological Chains of Chattel Enslavement, is a very good book to also read into as well if you're familiar with the Willie Lynch letters. Here, we go into our brand new, and I have to call it a think tank conversation now, because it's definitely geared towards getting the thinker to really pay attention. I remember when I was in college, we had a lecture class, and in that lecture hall, there weren't any interaction, there weren't any feedback. It was just, the teacher talking, and we would take notes. If we ask questions, we would get reprimanded for asking questions. There was a certain genre of things that you could do and were unable to do in that lecture hall as it related to that college experience. So, I want you to keep in mind that right now, although I'm not necessarily trying to duplicate the lecture hall per se, I am going to be sharing information. And again, because we couldn't get, the signatures in a timely fashion, right? We have to move forward in this manner, which is cool. So, just ride with me. My first introduction in this lecture, and it is getting kind of hot in here, but I want to loosen up a little bit. My first introduction into this lesson is the Sankofa movement, Re-Africanization, and the reality of war. Now, in that book right there, it talks about, the conditions that we face and where we are as people. How to develop the perspectives in every area of people activity to attain wellness. And that is a benchmark idea and a benchmark identity. The Ayade Sa, or the healing, is one of the words that's used there. And I'm in full agreement that, while we Sankofa, go back and fetch it, there needs to be a healing process. And in that healing, we're able to identify with Kepra, the rebirth. So that Sankofa Kepra is important. But this book is talking about, Re-Africanization and the reality of war. I said in a prior lecture that, perhaps a war took place and, our people, through whatever reason or means, ended up in this situation. Now, because, we ended up in this situation, there has to be a mechanism that looks towards growth, a mechanism that looks towards engagement, or even a transition in a spiritual aptitude that not only internalizes wellness of a people, but actualizes that practice. So I wanted this to be the backdrop of, what we're talking about here, the Sankofa movement by Kwame Ajiye and Akua Nso Akoto. Just as some information. This is a very, very good book to read as well. As pawns on the chessboard, we need to be aware of creativity, or as any piece on the chessboard. This slide is talking about, or it says, when creativity fits into order, or order fits into creativity, who is calculating the conditions? Who is calculating the response? So when we go into the chessboard, we're talking about 64 squares, 16 pieces on either side. You can calculate all of the possible moves on a chessboard. So the question in actualizing this idea in this flesh, in this physical presentation where we are, you have to be able to see, are we being creative and then putting that into a particular order? Or are we being ordered and trying to put that into a particular creativity? Has our conditions been calculated, and has the response been calculated? Because for years, months, and days, all these different ideas, they actually sound good. They sound great when we're talking about changing the conditions of a people in an environment. However, has those changes been made, and are they in fact affecting local, national, international levels of people who are the originals, the mother and fathers of all civilizations? Something definitely to think about as we continue to move further. George Sabria put a book out called Getting Black Folks to Sell. Why not have financial stability as a people? You know, when you dealt with Black Wall Street, it was called years ago Black Wall Street. You know, the Asiatics had 600 businesses, 21 churches, 21 restaurants, 30 grocery stores, 2 movie theaters, 6 private airplanes, 1 hospital, 1 bank, and its own school system. And this was being operated throughout the chocolate cities of America. Segregation did not afford the opportunity to utilize mass cultures, institutions. So as a people, the design was you had to build it yourself. See, we were fighting over separate and unequal then. We wanted to have just as good things even though they were to be separated. This is what the fight was. And we had no choice but to maintain our own institutions. The unfairness, you know, that whole Emmett Till dynamic, you know. Some of these things, you know, you have to study. I'm throwing a lot of words out there in the midst because you have to be able to study almost as if there is a prerequisite for the information being shared. I'm going to try to keep you up to speed as we continue to move on. But we talked about having financial stability where if everybody on your block looks like you should own a corner store. There should be a consortium or some sort of a unity, cooperative economics being pulled together with the ideal of owning the corner store, of owning the other institutions in communities. See, as we continue to dialogue about this, you have to be able to have the courage to identify with some things that are just real. The reality is one that we try not to face or understand as a people. Every country, every nationality came up off of the so-called African American by unifying and putting business institutions in the community. China, the United Kingdom, Europe, America, of course, with chattel enslavement, almost held Africa down and made so much money but never gave back. But in this cartoon is talking about, as a people, we haven't learned that lesson of cooperative economics. We haven't learned to unify in that genre. Yeah, society programs that make it difficult for us, but there has to be a time where we understand the importance of unity and we move in that facet. We move in that mode of unity. There has to be a time when we're doing that. See, I don't even need to go back years and say all of the resources are getting stripped from Africa, but we need to say that. We need to say Africa maybe needs to develop, a unified military to be able to defend itself from just getting the resources stripped, not even getting paid for the wealth of what's there. And that probably could trickle down to other countries. But that's a large conversation. What we're able to do is learn from the other folk and create institutions and build things in our communities and unify and stop letting everybody come one by one, running the economic train on the woman of our African economics. And I'm speaking it in a metaphor sense to paint a large picture that's going on. And this is a dialogue that people can agree with. We'll see how that transpires. Let's keep these ideas in mind. It's almost as if there's a masculine and a feminine principle, within each of us. And the masculine principle is standing, steadfast and firm and, wants to be aware and acknowledged and recognized for at least being able to be. And the woman is saying, well, I'm still going through changes. I'm still, getting emotionally abused, psychologically abused, financially abused, systematically taken out of the equation of the family, while the man is systematically being emasculated. This or these are ideas that, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. That this picture might just be representing. In fact, it looks as if the woman is saying, this man or these people done pulled me in the corner, done whatever they wanted to me, and let me live. Now I'm telling you to go and do something about it. And as a people, this is where we are doing something about it. Sometimes in them quiet conversations within, some of the greatest information gets shared. There's a reality that needs to be pursued in this dialogue. We have to understand when we're upset, when we feel a way, do we reach towards our phones? Do we turn on our televisions? This satellite radio, satellite TV, all of these different things, are they an asset or a pacifier? Are we using them to develop the things that we need as a community? It says a better nation is hard to learn the greatest spiritual wealth. A better nation, because you're trying to survive, you're trying to eat, you're trying to keep poverty down. It's hard to raise your thoughts to infinite wisdom. It's hard to identify with building the temple of the perfected man, using the tools in the workshop of the mind, where things are made with thought, where we build up character. It's difficult to be in the know of the crises in our lives and have a clear conception of the tasks that we are to perform amidst these crises. You see, comprehension brings about a beautiful thing when we're able to communicate, when we're able to share, when we're able to unify, not when we're able to turn away from what it is that we need to do and use technology as a pacifier. Watch a movie, make it through a couple more hours. Listen to some music, make it through a couple more hours. Text, look at the Facebook, get on the YouTube. We're not studying, putting in, and we're wasting time with a lot of it. Getting closer and closer to the flesh, the flesh death, so to speak. Now we have to be aware of this question. Is technology an asset or a pacifier? We have to really be aware of that. Life asks death. Why do people love me but hate you? And Death responded, because you are a beautiful lie, and I am a painful truth. Read that one more time. Life asked death, why do people love me but hate you? And death responded, because you are a beautiful lie, and I am a painful truth. You see, sometimes the vanity in thought, word, and deed gets in the way of our ability to enhance the wellness of our own lives, our own vanities, our own ignorances, our own sluggish will, the lack of wanting to build and enabling that want to do so. As I continue to travel to many different places, I hear people saying, yeah, we need, and this has been a consistent conversation, where we're struggling from social programming and neurokinetic input and many different dynamics. The simplicity of just getting up, talking to a person, and doing it. Asking everybody on your block for $5 or $10, making a down payment on an abandoned building, asking someone who knows about building codes and getting buildings, and doing it. Being able to take what you have and do great with what you have. Opening the schools in the living room, opening the social wellness centers in the living room, getting the foot spas and the massage tables, and doing these things for social wellness. Studying acupuncture, homeopathy, herbal medicine, the one that's used for breathing, sound, meditation, medicine. Having an hour a week in a spot on the block where healing can be generated. Peace has to be established and maintained. Because while we continue to dress ourselves up and go through changes and go to work on jobs that we don't like and not plan for intergenerational transmission of generations after us, and help our children learn the lessons that we learn by pulling out the dry erase board and jotting down the things that we should be jotting down and letting them comprehend what it is that we're sharing and showing, demonstrating, not just pointing, but doing. There's not much to it. Doing is important. Detaching from false definitions, but keeping the nucleus of the idea. Doing. Everybody might try to tell you how to do. Nothing wrong with that. But to do is important. There's a role of infinite wisdom where higher ordered thinking gets higher ordered results. I remember in public speaking, one of the terminologies that I learned was storming, forming, and knowing. Where you storm the room, then you form the conceptual idea that the room is to have, then you normalize the room to those norms of that conceptual idea. Now, in hindsight, it reminds me of somewhat of the chaos theory, where you shake everything up and then you establish order out of shaking it up. But what happens when you go in with peace and you move in the patience of peace, no matter what's going on? It doesn't matter. Peace. And you establish that peace. And in the establishment of that peace, then you raise that vibration and that energy in everything that you do. Now there's a part of me that's saying, who's creating the condition for you to respond to? There's a part of me that's saying, has the response already been calculated? And there's another part of me saying that within, you can establish peace. Within, you can continue to raise that vibration or raise that frequency in all you do. Doing. It's important. That idea of higher ordered thinking in practice gets higher ordered results. This is important. You know, what are 2 practices per day that draws you closer to perfection? One might just be meditation. Or prayer. Breathing. Yoga. Tai Chi. You know, African Kung Fu. African martial arts. African disciplines. 2 practices per day that draws you closer to perfection. Your best self. What are 2 practices per day that draws you closer to necessity, attaining what it is that you need? Now, we all, of course, are talking about in righteousness. For too many years, a lot of the information of the righteous has been utilized for negativity. Let's reverse the polarity of the negativity and identify with the righteousness. 2 practices per day that draws you closer to perfection. You might just breathe for 10 seconds. You know, you might get a chant. You know, like, you know, some of the Buddhists be, Nam Yaho Dengengyo. You know, they, oh, Amitafu, Namo Amitafu. Within silent meditation, or not saying anything, Adon Mashish Kumar, Lord Jesus arise. Silent meditations. 2 practices per day to get you closest to perfection. 2 practices per day to get you closer to necessity and what you need. 2 practices per day to get you closer to healing or being able to confront issues and attain resolve. Just 2 practices per day. One of them might just be listening. One of them might just be honest. Be honest to yourself. 2 practices per day that helps you grow within. 2 practices per day that might help you with financial resolve. It might just be listing what it is that you wanted to do to attain finance, or listing the many ways that you could, and then putting some time into your schedule and your time management to attain that. 2 practices per day that'll help you with relationship wellness. Relationship wellness and the ability to resolve, to have resolution in your issues. Just 2 practices per day. This is a practice, a deep meditation. And I'm glad to be able to share this with you all in the silence of it just being me, because it's almost as if the voice of what is supreme is talking to my being out loud. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that one. That might be deep. But we're getting to the point where our consciousness, being awake, is guided by thoughts and thinking. Our subconscious, the underlying aspects of what we're thinking, we're aware of. So if we know that we're dealing on a base level, on a really base level, where we're, motivated by sexuality of women. As a man, that's one of the things where no matter what you're doing, a beautiful woman walk by, it'll strike you a certain way. But if we are motivated that way into the negative text, that underlying aspect is going to go into our communication. It's going to go into a stimulus that's going to trigger something in the brain that might engage a diet or something that we eat that's not good. We're aware of these subconscious tendencies, these underlying aspects of life. We're aware of the preconscious. What happens before, we're aware of it. To be aware of what happened before you were aware, knowing that history, knowing that something was really done simple just to get in your head. And once it got in your head, it triggered a response. And that response might have been, boom, a punch in the face, but have we been mindful of the 2 practices per day to develop that foresight, to develop that awareness, that consciousness in the present, and give us insight into a situation? Why are people trying to get into your head in a negative manner? Why are so many subliminal and underlying ideas being given and distributed? Is that to enhance the quality of you building, or to take away from your focus, distracting you from it? These kinds of things we must be aware of. And I'm saying it right now in the rhythm of what I like to identify with as patience. Sometimes it's just that patience, that careful, clear meditation that helps us to organize ourselves for wellness. You don't take out adult frustrations on little children. So we not, beating the child with the anger and frustrations of an adult. Sometimes you have to stop. Make sure that they understand what has been happening for over 400, 500 years. Understand the practices to change the condition, and understand that's going to take years before we're able to do it on our own. But that child of change, that child of infinite wisdom and idea, that child of community development has already been birthed. And we're standing on the shoulders of elders who have already paved the way for us to get the information and actualize that information and organize right around our peer grouping. If we all sitting around, smoking a little herb or whatever, doing our thing, maybe we should go without herb for maybe a month and put our monies up, put it together, and see what we can build. We might be able to, buy 10 dozens of socks and sell them to raise economics to get a down payment on the barbershop that we really want to have, or the hair salon, or the nail salon, or the fruit stand, or the food truck, or get a patent on our idea for sneakers and the products, the manufacturing skills, to get into overseas networks. The sneakers they saying made in Taiwan, made in Japan, and from studies, they don't cost $500 to make or $100 to make. They might cost, and I'm being extra with this one, they might cost $10 to make, but you might sell them for $30, $40. They might even cost 28 cents to make. But nothing is stopping us from tapping into these international markets to develop economic stability. You know, and here in this picture we have the symbol of the Kepler, you know, of the rebirth, of the awakening, you know, of the rising, forever rising, you know, forever rising, giving high honor, forever rising. You know, we have these pictures here. And these movements, you know, that I'm doing, you know, they are meditations. You know, because at one point we were at a dead level, and now we at, you know, a 45-degree angle where we're beyond freezing. A dead level to be able to raise up on the square and engage in practices of development, the square being the truth. So these metaphors come from many different schools of thought, but in the simplicity of it, where a child can understand. From any doctrine of truth, any truth doctrine, you take the best part of the message, the awakened thoughts, not what we're bickering and arguing about which path to take to get to the same destination. But when you take the idea that we all going to the same destination, we want good communities, good homes, strong families. We want our women to be respected. We don't want to balance righteousness and unrighteousness because one is the creator of the other. That's like we don't want to balance God and devil because God, in all of the histories and readings that I've read, is the creator of the ideas of devilishment. So we don't want that kind of balance. We want to outbalance and we want to subdue unrighteousness. So in any doctrine of truth, take the best part of the message, the awakened thoughts, and I utilize, you know, the symbol of my eye who came with the law. You know, what is important to be able to do and what you don't want to do as we continue to assist in our own development, our own inner judiciary system. That's the character. We begin to engage the penalty and the reward for our own behavior. In doing these kind of a community dynamics, you don't want nobody to get the money and run away with it. You know, backbite it. Any nonsense. Let's raise our thinking away from that. Stop having the thoughts of the negativity that could occur because it's guided by a power and a force that's well beyond any aspect of unrighteousness. Think about it. These attributes of wellness, again, was already engaged by elders. At the bottom of the screen here, you have the words philosophies of women. Now, the master Father Muhammad, he would say a nation is known by the women that they present. So his philosophy in organization, as it was engaged by the messenger, the messenger, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was Muslim girl training and general civilization classes, a class separate from the men, a class that was organized in teaching the women and girls in Islam how to keep a home and raise their children and keep a husband and be industrious in the identity of womanhood. And this was the master, the messenger. Then we had the prophet. The prophet Noble Drew Ali. He came with developing a civic and a spiritual organization after the forerunner of Marcus Mosiah Garvey for the social wellness of the Asiatics here in America, who should not be called Negro, Black, and Colored, because those were names that was given to slaves by slaveholders, in 1779, and it lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. So he was restoring the ancient creed of the forefathers to the people. The Baba, in the 60s and whatnot, when we begin to identify with our ancient creed and African cosmology, African-centered schools of thought, the original schools of thought, Nubia, Kush, Kemet, Al-Qibla, Ifuyale, all of these beautiful names, you bear witness to, you bear witness to Baba, these people who were fathers and mothers from an African-centered consciousness perspective. We begin as a people to bear witness to the Bible. Then you had the father who was very instrumental, because during the transition from the Nation of Islam unto Al-Islam, from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to his son Wallace D. Muhammad, there were some years, 74 to 79, if I'm not mistaken. Please get the correct information if I'm incorrect. But during that time, you had the father who, in 1964, the Nation of Gods and Earth, Allah's 5%, established. And during that time, those teachings, the question and answers from Master Fard Muhammad to, answered by Honorable Elijah Muhammad, those teachings essentially, the essential aspects of those teachings is what I'll say, the 120, because I want to be able to give honor and respect where respect and honor is due. The father came through during that 74, 79 to keep those teachings abreast. So when the minister, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came, they had some teachings to do. So no matter what path of truth, the nucleus and the essential truths are trying to make a difference, change the condition, honor our women, put them in the place of privilege in society, because that will put our children in a place of privilege in society. Honor our men, put them in a place of privilege in society, because again, that will put our children in a place of privilege in society. These are the ideas and the ideals of our ancestors, where through examining the world and looking at it and living it, you got people that was considered to be masters and prophets and messengers and fathers and Babas and ministers and Christs and Muhammad's, and peace be upon him. Here, demonstrating in the language of a people here, that we should be able to change the dynamics, organizations. Some of our elders have participated in many social organizations in hopes to uplift themselves, to create an impact. Some of us have been through dynamics where we had to take vows and oaths not to discuss these things and because they're sacred, and in the wrong hands, things could go wrong. All kind of different aspects here, so that wellness can be attained, whether it would be in this current lifetime or the next. But the sluggish will enacts unnecessary longevity. It's like hitting the snooze button of life, the sluggish will. Alarm ring, get up. Alarm ring, get up. The days are coming where the inability to afford to hit the snooze button, man, those days is here. You can't hit that snooze button now. We have to be aware of the areas of activity. And you can look to Brooklyn Public Library or Brooklyn Literacy Project, social literacy, to see the areas of activity that we were discussing that came out of Dr. Francis Cress Welson's ISIS papers. When you see me move out of the screen, I'm on the chain and the slide, or checking to see if the camera's still on, making sure that the information that's being written down, is able to be read. Just some different housekeeping things. But to know the areas of activity, to be aware of the problems and the issues that we need to confront. What is the modern day resolve? What are we doing in the modern day? And what was the ancient resolve? You see, there's certain things that we didn't have to deal with, or it's not spoken about in history in ancient times. So there has to be modern day resolves. I don't know if crack was around during ancient times. So what is the modern resolve? Sometimes it's important to apply that. What are the furthest extremes of resolve, both negative and positive? Further extremes of resolve. Some people are saying, or somebody said to me, and I suppose they thought it was profundity. I said, wow. If this were the case, Allah wouldn't be trying to show forth and prove his powers if that was being done. So she says, why have the different meetings? Why try to talk to people? Does it really matter? Why not just take your own life and be at one with Allah, and just different ideas? And I had to say, no, that is not what you do. Even if you don't know the answer and you don't have the resolve, that's one of the furthest extremes of resolve in negativity. It's somewhere that says that even to do that is negative or a sin, and you won't be pulled closer to Allah. In my readings, now what are the extremes of resolve in positivity without the high blood pressure, the aneurysms, and the strokes? To maintain peace within, raise your thoughts to infinite wisdom. Use your astral projection skills and project what's going to happen. Say the affirmations and then walk into it. We're talking about far extremes, walking out, talking to the people. See, this is an extreme because it's not a regular, everyday practice. Saying to the people, look, see that building over there? I've been looking into it, did a little bit of research. I'm trying to get some funds to repair it. Once it's repaired, it's going to be A, B, C, and D. following through, letting them know I need such and such to make this happen. We're going to continue to strive. If you know somebody has a particular skill and you have a way in the profession where they have the skill, help them if you're able to. If you're able to, but if you're not able to help, don't hinder. These are very good notions to identify with, to be able to share. And in identifying with this notion and being able to share, we continue to elevate. Now, in this patience that I'm speaking in, if you fell asleep or dozed off, no, don't worry about it. Watch it again. Take your notes, because I am reading the slides individually and in the quiet of your mind, in the quiet of your heart. Hear the best part that's being presented and raise the frequency and the vibration of the best part, of the best part that's being presented. Now I'm your brother. I can be reached at 267-601-1833. You can send me an email to Sankofa, Khepra, Sankofa, Sankofa, Khepra @gmail.com. You can click on the website, sankofakepra.braveseits.com, sankofakepra.bravesites.com, or People Inc., peopleinc.bravesites.com. I'm your brother.